You're now listening to the Something Good Podcast Network. Please press any key to continue.
You don't know about the other side of the pyramid? The fifth side? It's called the floor, you dumbass. I just want to make sure he realizes there is a fifth side to the pyramid.
And once you open your fucking mind of undefeated goddamn fairness.
I know all of them, and I believe none of them, which makes me an expert. Hello, folks. Welcome to a brand new episode of the Cryptic Conspiracy Cult. I am your host, and I have two special guests. That isn't Christy Phillips. I have, to my right, Alex Stiff.
Yo, yo.
He will be our acting Jamie today.
Yes, sir.
And to my left is my cousin from West Virginia, the home of the funnest cryptids.
Yeehaw!
Yeah, Mr. Mothman, Grafton Monster, whatever fucking stupid thing that came from outer space.
Mr. Mothman himself over here.
Robert Reistenberg.
Sup?
Stop. Bruh. Bruh. Nah, guys, we're doing a full podcast day. We're all just getting together, trying to knock out quite a bunch of episodes and trying to start 2024 on a good old start. Last time I had a fly-by-night episode with Fireball that I hope you guys enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed recording it. God damn, that was wild.
I will say, making the artwork for that was fun because Fireball legit looks like a cryptid.
Yep. Hey, what's that in the woods?
Oh, it's just
Is that
Fireball.
Is that the Caucasian skunk ape? It's Fireball! Oh, God! Woo-wee, brother! But no, today we are not talking about the fictional Fireball or the real man himself, but today we are talking about a cult. A big request from the Discord of a handful of y'all, but Robert, you brought this one up. Heaven's Gate.
Yeah, it's very funny. We were literally sitting in a restaurant.
Fucking hilarious, too, if I might add.
yeah, just so fucking funny. We were sitting around in a restaurant and just, chatting shit back and forth. And then I look at Chris and I go, hey, how's the podcast doing? What episodes are coming up? And he's like, oh, we're doing our Cryptic Conspiracy Cult episode. And I was like, oh, have you guys covered Heaven's Gate? And he was like, come out, talk about it.
No, I always want random people to come on the show and tell me either stuff I don't know or let's reminisce about some shit I do know. And Heaven's Gate's on that list. And we've kind of taken Heaven's Gate off the list. I kind of wanted to hold it off for someone who really wanted to talk about it because it being a one-off cult and just being in that era of the 90s, which is just this batshit crazy era of homegrown terrorism, white nationalists, the fucking Alphabet Squad fucking up every goddamn day from the ATF to the DEA. Heaven's Gate is that one outlier that really kicks the 90s, for me, out of the park when it comes to just batshit craziness.
Yeah, and I mean, like most things that kind of went tits up in the 90s, it got its start in the 1970s.
Yes. But yeah, let's go into it. This is there's a quick synopsis for people who don't know. A Mr. Marshall Applewhite, coolest eyes in the game, I gotta say. Didn't need no sunglasses to get his cult off the ground. Started in a hospital in 1972. He was being kind of taken care of by his one and only love, Miss Bonnie Lou Nettles. And from 1975 all the way up to the end in 1997, that ends in the largest American soil death of a cult, with a combination of 39 people, 21 women and 18 men of all varying ages, were all found dead in their San Diego suburban home, with robes, Nike decades, filled with barbiturates, vodka, deader in hell, all waiting to ride that rocket to heaven, the Hale-Bopp comet. This is I will say, guys, when we discuss it, this has got a lot of shit in it. There's a lot of nuances to their little cult. There's a lot of Jesus. There's a lot of Star Trek. A lot of goddamn Star Trek.
Yeah.
and a lot of castration. But I'll leave that out. But yeah, it's Marshall Applewhite. This guy alone, just looking at a photo of this man, is batshit crazy. The eyes on this guy.
Yeah.
It's like the eyes of Tammy Faye Baker. You know, it's just like, Jesus Christ. Out the gate.
Yeah, I mean, like, so he, and I guess to start with him, we're going to go back a couple of years, really starting with the 70s. He got his start at the University of St. Thomas in Houston, Texas, as I think it was a music professor. And there's a lot more context that could be added, but I don't think that's necessarily relevant to the formation of the cult and things that happened in. But he was a closeted homosexual who ended up having an affair with a student.
Well, his students regarded him as an engaging speaker and a stylish dresser.
Signs were there. And it was after that, plus several other events, like I think we listened to a podcast on the way here. They said that he had a heart attack, but it wasn't him. I think it was his dad and or some other family member, but I know for sure it was not him himself. But being let go from his job, that event led to him having a mental breakdown and then being interred at a mental facility where he ran into Bonnie Lou Nettles.
Yeah, so their relationship is a very codependent relationship going into it. They see each other not as a boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, and wife, but as two people who need each other more than anything. She nurses him back to health from his mental breakdown, all caused by the fear of being found out. Because the whole situation with the student was there was an inciting incident. And for people who don't realize this, back in the day when that kind of thing happened, it was either swept under the rug or you went to fucking jail for indecency. Those were the only two options. And I can imagine in late 60s, early 70s, Houston, fucking Texas, a mental breakdown is kind of an easy thing to come by down there when you're trying not to be yourself.
Yeah.
But no, she kind of, nurses him back to health, and there is this like understanding between the two of them. There is a book that you can use this as reference. I forget the author's name, but it is the true story of Heaven's Gate. I think it's called Catching the Comet. But it is about how he met her and how they basically tied out the religion, how they kind of wrote everything out in a fly-by-night kind of manner, and then kind of solidified it to the early to mid 80s.
Yeah, which it's so crazy because they literally start with, but he wrote himself, Marshall Applewhite wrote himself that he was just visiting a friend at the psychiatric hospital, but I believe it was that he was interred there and she was taking care of him.
Yeah, she was a nurse there.
And he wrote that he felt that they had already met before, known each other for quite a while before, and that is when she told him that their meeting had been foretold, prophesized by extraterrestrials.
Yeah, so what are the standing points of the Heaven's Gate cult or religion is our physical bodies here are just vessels that are temporary as we ascend to heaven. So there is a Christian aspect to it, that there is a heavenly body, but on the scientific end, that we are aliens to this world who inhabit the vehicle that is the body. So as funny as that is, it's not no different than Jesus coming to America turning...
Man, this ain't no different.
This ain't no goddamn different than Jesus coming to America and turning the Indians red. So says the Mormons. But I digress.
I do declare.
It is no different than a man killing a giant with a little rock and a sling.
Real quick, when you're holding your mic, try holding it on the actual microphone. You don't have it in headphones, so you don't hear it. anytime that chord moves, it does like a rustle noise. So yeah, as long as you don't even have to like do like that. You can probably just however you just feel comfortable with it. It doesn't have to be like super. Yeah, sorry, go ahead though.
Good. You're good, man. Hey, your guys' podcast. You tell me what to do.
No, you're doing great so far. It's just that was the only bit of audio thing. It only started showing up more this episode.
We'll fix that in post.
Fix that shit, Jamie.
No, goddammit, I have enough things to fix already.
Shit, not on my end.
Except
all the cussing.
Marshall Applewhite was, I would say, very easily that he grew up religious, and he and Nettles kind of tied this the New Age movement and Christianity into science fiction. Like Applewhite himself, he was really into Robert Heinlein, Star Trek, but also like the King James Bible.
Yeah.
See, I knew Star Trek was of the devil. That's why I'm a Star Wars fan, like a good Christian boy.
And like what's even crazier to me is
has
that
the same amount of incest in both.
what's even crazier to me is that in Heaven's Gate they actually taught that when Star Trek would be part of their like daily teachings, they would watch hours of Star Trek, and according to people that were they called themselves the crew. Not Heaven's Gate actually came later. They were not known by Heaven's Gate till after the suicide.
Yeah.
But that they were told that they should aspire to be more like the Borg, which I think is really interesting because, like, the Borg are the villains, right? They assimilate, they strip away that individuality into the collective. I haven't watched Star Trek in a long time.
No, you nailed it on the head.
But so
I would love to do a whole like 10-part, 12-hour miniseries about Star Trek, but no one else watches Star Trek, so
my dad does. Yeah,
hell yeah. I'll get your dad Rob on the fucking line. I'll get that motherfucker talking about the Klingons and the Pon farr and all that shit.
Yeah.
But no, so the cool thing about like when they're talking about the teachings of Star Trek, that is a subculture on its own of a nerd subculture, but there is something very simple to people who view that subculture in a certain way, especially the idea of the prime directive. Do not interfere in a way that can disrupt. That's the prime directive. That was the whole point of Star Trek. The Borg in Star Trek are the villains, but when you talk about assimilate and erase individuality, it was also about creating the mass collective of knowledge. And this is kind of where Scientology kind of comes in, when it talks about like the body is the vessel, the vehicle or whatever, and like there is a alien soul that can ascend to a heaven. We actually heard some of Applewhite's actual teachings in a recording on the way down here, and the way he kind of describes it is, incorporating the Bible into it is like Jesus was the last one to leave, and everyone here has been stuck ever since. And it's kind of, when you brought up like Robert Heinlein and stuff like that, who has a very left-right mechanic when he's writing his stories. When you have something like Starship Troopers, which is a very hardcore right-wing science fiction army book, and then you have Stranger in a Strange Land, which is a Jesus character, a water brother, which I have a lot to say about Elon Musk using that book for some new program he invented, which makes no goddamn sense. But that's for another off-air comment. But no, like, so when you read those books, you do get this kind of like second coming of Jesus moment in Stranger in a Strange Land. And I could see him reading that and being like, well, this makes sense just like the Bible makes sense. I could see him pulling that together and making his own understanding belief. When we all do that in a point, like how we understand something is we kind of make something up until we figure it out. We create a hypothesis, a thesis basically, and work it out from there. But he was able to create a whole religion out of it. And Bonnie Nettles just coexisting with him. And I can imagine this, for us, this is just like a break room kind of talk. But for them, this was a therapy session for him.
Oh yeah.
And they nailed out the pillars of their whole fucking religion right then and there, and just added to it as they all sat around watching Star Trek.
Yeah. And I think that it's very important not to understate the science fiction elements. Like when you watch a lot of cult documentaries, there's a lot of anybody could fall for this. But I think that's not true, because you have to think about the type of person that would be swept away specifically by science fiction and extraterrestrials along with religion.
Well, going into extraterrestrials just real quick, I always ask this of everybody who's new to the show. Do you believe aliens exist?
I think it's more likely than not.
Get the fuck out of here, you fucking freak. No. But no, I always ask that question.
No matter what answer you give, he finds a way to make you the bad guy for thinking that.
It's my show. My show. You can say all that shit on the couch potatoes. I don't care. It's not my show.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you see, you had a lot more fun on the couch potatoes, didn't
I
you?
know. Now I'm under attack.
I was
What
gonna
the
say,
fuck?
now you're doing Chris's show, and it's a lot more mine. It's all of a sudden to see how quiet I've been. He's whipped me into submission. I've learned.
Get back to work, Jamie.
Keep reading. You see,
Read the source material,
You
and
see-
then you can speak.
you see, I've been over here reading.
Yeah. Keep reading the website.
I am. Dude, this fucking website's nuts. I can't wait till we get to the 90s portion. I have a lot to talk about then. Because it's all coming back to me now. As I've heard about this stuff all throughout the years, and I'm like, oh, it was this. Oh, yeah, I forgot about this. Yeah, keep going.
Yeah, break out your Nike.
Keep talking about 70s, because I
yeah.
saw some tidbits on that too. Yeah, go ahead.
So going out of the 70s, he kind of runs into kind of some financial problems because they decided to take their show on the road. But with that, they actually put in, they kind of do a money scam, which for this cult, this isn't like Jim Jones where it's, a foundation church that he's running. These people are basically running out of the trunk of a car. And they're getting, people to donate money, followers here and there. But is a nomadic cult. Fun fact, one of their members who ended up dying in the mass suicide, the woman who played Lieutenant Aurora in the original series, her brother was a victim of the cult. He became part of it and joined and died. So that's kind of a big kind of pull when you talk about the type of people who join the cult, because another story like this is like Wild Wild Country. When you talk about those people who join the cult or people in the Jim Jones cult, they're not dumb. They're not always downtrodden either. They just want a place to fit in. I will never take the stance that people who join a cult are dumb or lesser than intellectually. They just want a place to fit in, and society and their own personal development has guided them to that area. And whatever happens, happens. There are a lot of smart people in cults. If you watch Wild Wild Country, there were engineers, city planners, politicians that were part of that cult who turned a desert into an oasis. Here, you had guys who were in web development who were part of the cult, because by the time they actually get a site in San Diego, they're living in a small mansion, basically, in suburbia in San Diego. And it's $7,000 a month in 1992.
Well, let's not jump too far because I feel like we kind of skimmed over some important stuff that happened in the 70s.
I'm not jumping to. I'm just saying to get an idea of like who these people are.
Yeah.
These are engineers. These are computer engineers, especially, but they're not dumb.
Yeah, and I wasn't meaning to, maybe if I hinted at it, I wasn't trying to say that they were.
No, it's like people who listen to this show. I just want them to understand that the common misconception about cultists is they're dumb religious fanatics who don't understand anything. No, they're just people who fall into place just like any other place.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like, I'm going to use, since we talked about it previously, I'm going to use middle school as an example, right? You want to find your in-group at that time, right? Not that they have the mentality of somebody in middle school, but like people still look for that. And if odds were at this time, right? Like in the 70s, you had it was like the height of the Cold War. Eschatology became a big thing. Eschatology being like predicting the end of the world. And that led people who were especially maybe into science fiction to seek that as an escape. So like they're not dumb, but at the same time, like if you are a cult leader who specifically goes out of their way to add these extraterrestrial elements, then like you are the target of that person, right? Is what I'm saying.
Yeah. But like going back after, so before they start their little money scam in around 1975, they go to Oregon. This is where they get their first group of people.
So real quick, I did want to point it. So in 72 is one of the points I was wanting to really kind of touch on, because to me, this kind of shows the dynamic between Marshall and Bonnie. So shortly after they met, I literally just had till I scrolled up to read her name. Let's see. By June 19th, Applewhite and Nestle's beliefs had solidified in their Christian New King James Version beliefs. And they have been trying to reach other higher level minded people. They wrote a pamphlet that described Jesus' reincarnation as a Texan, and a veiled reference to Applewhite. Furthermore, they concluded that there were two witnesses described in the book of Revelation, and that occasionally visited churches or other spiritual groups to speak of their identities, often referring to themselves as the Two or the UFO Two. They believed they would be killed and resurrected, and then, in the view of others, transported onto a spaceship. This event, which they referred to as the demonstration, was to prove their claims, and to their dismay, their ideas were poorly received among religious groups. So all the way back in 72, they're sitting here going, "We aliens!"
Not just any aliens, the two witnesses in Revelations.
Yes.
And this is where we get their nicknames for each other, He and Doe.
And see, and that's why I felt like this was an important little
So
step
this is where it comes in important when they're in Oregon, because this is when they create the names T and Doe. When they first get their little batch of followers in Oregon, they convince around 20 people to give up earthly possessions, sell their houses, get cash on hand, and they all go to Colorado. Now, when they talk about that pamphlet, they were able to condense that pamphlet down into basically a want ad, and they start using that money and submitting that to newspapers with wide broadcasting. Hey, do you think of something new? This is us. I mean, basically a fucking shot in the dark to every newspaper in every small town, big city. And they start doing that from Oregon all the way to Colorado. But by the time 1975 rolls around, they've been doing this ebb and flow of talking people out of their possessions and into following them. Now, this is kind of the crazy thing about it.
Yeah, because actually, talking about what you were saying on there, Sharon Morgan in May 1974 rather, abandoned her two children to join them, and then a month later, Sharon left the two and returned back to her family. So I mean, these people are getting like wives and mothers to leave their families to go run off with them.
And in the 70s, you have this religious revolution that hasn't happened since the 1820s. Because in the 1820s, we get the Shakers, the Mormons, Mennonites, and we start getting these new religious groups in mass.
The Great Awakening, I think.
Yeah, the Great Awakening. There's a small version in the 20s, not that big. But in the 70s, you don't only have Jim Jones, you have the end of the hippie generation at the tail end of the 60s and the New Wave movement. And then you start getting people like Applewhite. And then you start getting people like Ma Anand Sheila. You start getting Osho. You start getting new ideas from Eastern religions mixing in with Christianity. And then you get Christian cults that are still in operation today. The family cult. The Church of the New God. You know, these things are still around today, but think what fascinating what it is about Heaven's Gate is not only the scientific aspect of it, that there is like, hey, science is kind of scary. You know, the old time religion that you grew up with in the 50s and 60s as a kid. But you could still have that with us. It's just, it was misinterpreted. This is what we figured out. That, no, Jesus was Jesus, but his spirit was not of earth. You know, and for someone who is having a mental crisis of faith, I'm not saying they have a mental disorder, but they're having a conscientious escape that they need to reach and that they couldn't get, that their parents got from church. It's okay. This new answer is here, and it's a fun grab. Scientology did this, but they did it in a way that kind of got rid of psychology. That was their big enemy. So you do have this new wave, not only with science fiction of what the future could be, you know, but think about what else has happened in the 70s. We just landed on the moon in 69. All right. The world's changing weapons-wise in the 70s. Vietnam ends in 73. The world is coming off kind of back to a kilter of, hey, there's no longer black and white, there's a gray area. I don't have to worry about hanging out with somebody who's a communist and getting killed. I don't have to worry about as much as being nuked as I did in the 50s. You know, you have a balance that's coming. It's a pendulum swing that's coming hard right into the fucking 80s. But right there during that swing, a religious movement was prime and ready to go. And that's where all these cults come from. The New Age movement is just another idea of how to handle your fucking problems. And we can do it through meditation, acupuncture, yoga, communes, drinking, getting high, whatever you want to do.
Drinking, smoking, getting high.
Yeah, and like the Church of the Living Motorcycle, man. But with that being said, like these guys, just like Jim Jones, were in the prime of their fucking lives to pick these people out of these small towns and drag them whenever they wanted to go. And I'm not saying he's doing this in a malicious way. I'm just saying he's the guy that hit that point, because eventually someone's going to come along and hit that home run every time. I'm not saying Marshall Applewhite is evil. He's not good, but he's not evil.
Yeah.
You know, not like Jim Jones. Jim Jones is fucking evil.
Jim Jones was fucking evil.
Yeah. But yeah, so like going into like 1975, this is where in their Kingdom of Heaven Tea and Dough age is really kicking the fuck off.
Yeah, when they started talking about things like the next level.
Yeah. They start doing video recordings. They start doing live seminars, conventions, basically. They start doing the hotel convention center kind of spiel, where it's like the get rich quick screen guys, you know. But they do it that way in a religious aspect. They're not going to a church, but they are getting people who don't want to go to church but are just kind of agnostic or in the middle, and they do this for a solid decade, and they were able to like build up funds all the way up to 1985. And there is this lull for that whole decade where you start getting a lot of situations like that young lady with the 2 kids. There are people leaving their families, but this wasn't like just for Heaven's Gate. This happened all throughout the 70s, all across America with different cults. I'm trying to remember the name of that one cult that used to be, they used to make fun of them. They used to be at the airport all the time. But the people with the tambourines and shit and the turbans and shit. But anyway, it was a joke in the movie Airplane.
Yeah.
But those guys, they were a legitimate cult. They would catch people just tired as fuck at an airport and talk them into going into a meeting while they're waiting for the next flight. And then all of a sudden, they're part of that fucking cult. And they use targeting tactics. Tea and Dough, I'll just name them as that. Applewhite and Nettles, they use that same tactic. They find people who are downtrodden, and this is an evil tactic that they use, but it's a tactic that works because they think they are the good people. The problem with what I see this is, out the gate, if you're telling me that you're the reincarnation of the two witnesses of Revelations, that's a bad thing. If I'm going to join a cult, please tell me the world's going to end in like 2154. That way we could just hang out. Sure, you know what I'm saying?
No, we can't just hang out.
No, I can't be like, oh, the world's ending in 2025. That sucks. What about like 2075? Sure, because that's a good time away, brother. But and that's that goes into the whole aspect of what's a good cult leader. A good cult leader says the world ends after he dies because he don't give a fuck. But yeah, so like these guys going into the 80s, they are just bebopping along, traveling, and doing the pamphlet thing.
Yeah. I think it's in 76 that they stop what they called these the harvest, right? So the first harvest lasted up until 1976, and this is when they close off and start to really kind of make that doctrine that we've been talking about kind of throughout this. They didn't have priests or bishops or anything like that, of course.
No hierarchy in the cult.
Yeah.
Only Tiendo.
But like a rigid set of behavioral guidelines, including like banning sexual activity, drug use, etc.
And things like that. Celibacy. You would have a check partner, so like somebody who kind of like how Mormons travel in pairs, right, to make sure one of them doesn't fall into sin. It's the same
Until
sort
they
of
fall into
concept.
sin with each other.
Well, that's when they get to a camp with their accountability.
They viewed their body as a vehicle and their mind as a computer.
Yeah.
They would dress androgynously because they're
A lot of sweatpants.
a lot of sweatpants, but mostly for the sexual aspect. Look androgynous to kind of repress those urges, along with celibacy. Very limited media, except for, of course, Star Trek and aspiring to be the Borg. Something I learned that I thought was pretty interesting is that they would, in order to be affirming, kind of like the Borg, right, to kind of embrace that aspect of them, they would change their names. So they would take 2 letters of your original name, and then you would just add O-D-Y at the end. So like my name, Robert, I would be R. Bodie. Right? I'm assuming that is to kind of like change you're already thinking like a Borg, kind of changing how your computer runs is how I would guess that works.
Well, it's also the tactic of a major religion or cult. I need to take away the basic human function of want. What's more wanting than getting fucking laid? I'm going to take that away from you. Unless I'm making a sex cult, that's the first thing I'm taking away from you. And then I'm taking away the drugs. Unless it's a mind-altering substance where I'm the only person that's sober. I'm making you change your name, which the Nation of Islam does that to people. You are a great example. You are no longer Cassius Clay. You are Muhammad X. And then Muhammad X became Muhammad Ali. That's how that worked. So you create a whole new identity under this church. And when you're doing that, you're stripping your mind of your old life and the anchor and base you lived by. And when you start stripping that away from people, along with, sex and want, and then having someone check in on you, it becomes this faux version of, oh, I'm being taken care of, when in fact you are being controlled.
Yeah. And to continue on with where we are with doctrine here, another effect of this is that like the way it was framed within the Cult of Heaven's Gate is that it was a personal metaphysical journey at this specific point. A lot of people characterize it as spiritual from the beginning, and there's truth to that, but that's not how they viewed it themselves. It was a personal metaphysical journey, but that everybody was free to leave, in quotes. But once you've done all of this and you leave to go reintegrate into society, you find that you are now the out group. So where does that lead you? Right back to them. So it makes it even harder to kind of escape that life.
That goes back to Heinlein's book, Stranger in a Strange Land. Michael Valentine Smith comes to Earth and has to integrate himself as a human on Earth, as a person human on Mars. And then his personal beliefs are seen as, oh, no, we don't do that here. Remember the aspect of grokking?
Yeah.
Yeah. A verb that was used to just kind of describe this mutual understand psychologically, physically, and emotionally. But that's how they wanted it to be. There is no sex. There is no you and I. There is only us. And that's how Michael Valentine Smith was in the book. He saw everyone as his brother or sister.
Most of what happened in the 70s.
But yeah, going back.
Well, so my main question, so one of the things I was kind of looking through, because this kind of seems to be the point to ask, what happened between the mid 80s and the mid 90s? Because looking through like the website, the Wikipedia page, it really seems like, you know, in the mid 80s, they just kind of dipped the fuck out. And then the next part of it is talking about contemporary media coverage, where it was covered by LA Weekly in 94, talking about the book Messengers of Deception from 79.
So in 1985, Bonnie Nettles dies of cancer. And this is kind of a big blow to the doctrine, because if your body is, think of it like this, right? If your body is a vehicle, what happens when that vehicle breaks down? It's not supposed to, because I am an extraterrestrial being going to achieve the next level. And what that was especially hard for Marshall, because she, like, he's Doe, she is T. They're the two, Bo and Peep, you know? And so for the first time in the first 10 years of the existence of this cult, he sends everybody home. And then goes on this kind of spiritual journey of his own for the second time. Yeah, like a vision quest before recalling everybody. And that's when the doctrine really changes from that physical, metaphysical journey to the spiritual journey, to where he starts calling himself the second, like the reborn Texan Jesus, etc.
Yeah, so like he's going on. So when Bonnie Nettles dies, the rock of the religion is gone. Everyone saw Bonnie Nettles as
the true leader.
True leader. Applewhite would take cues from her, because she was a little bit more experienced on the Bible than he was. But, you know, at the end of the day, they were the leaders together. This wasn't like one guy, one religion. This was a couple that dominated the whole fucking thing. And when one goes, it kind of goes to shit. But what happens between 85 and 95, something special happens. Star Trek The Next Generation debuts. And now we have a whole new source material from 87 throughout the 90s of product that he can realize, like, oh my God, how could I have missed it? Because people keep in mind, Star Trek debuts in the 60s and runs for maybe 3 seasons. What they're watching is a syndicated run of a 3-season show that doesn't come back on air until 1987 as The Next Generation. I used to watch Next Generation. I watched it with my grandpa.
Yeah, I watched it with my dad, yeah.
There are some batshit moments in there that kind of change the story of the original series. If he's on his vision quest, he's 2 years out of his best friend, his partner, gone, and he sent everyone home, and he's got to figure out what to do now. This show comes on, he watches it for maybe 2 or 3 years, and he realizes, I know what I did wrong. Bonnie didn't leave us. She just ascended first. And so now he's able to bring everyone back into the fold to a point, because not everybody comes back, obviously. But because it's the 90s going into it, I would say around 1990 was his prime time way of coming back, because that's when he starts going back and starts reintegrating the pamphlets, starts reintegrating the conferences, and then people start coming back and they're like, "Hey, Marshall, how you doing?" I can imagine that's how most of the conversation started, and he's like, "I'm doing good. I found some stuff out that I've realized that me and Doe have missed. Let me tell you about it." And then he starts doing the video recordings.
Yeah.
The video recordings that he does, the rituals and the teachings and everything, are so fucking serious. If you watch Applewhite, you can watch him on YouTube. If you watch him talk in these videos, he almost doesn't blink, and he maintains eye contact with you, not in a serious, scary tone, but it's a monotone, it's comforting, and it's something you would hear like a grandpa would say, trying to get you to fall asleep or something like. It's this old guy just trying to tell you, trying to comfort you into, this is how it is. This is what you used to know, and this is what it really is. When we ascend to the gates of heaven, we will leave this vehicle together. And it's very melodic the way he talks. A great description of this is how people have said before Jim Jones started wearing the sunglasses was, Jim Jones could look you in the face in a crowd of people and make you feel like you're the only person there. A surviving cult member said that. Here's the crazy part. That surviving cult member in the 90s met Bill Clinton on a campaign run and said he could do the same goddamn thing. They said Bill Clinton could look you in the face, man or woman, and make you feel like you're the only person there. And that is a crazy fucking skill to do. That could either be the most sincere thing a person can do, but it's also the most corruptible thing a person can do. And he has that. If you watch those videos, and if you're think about this. It's the early 90s. We're coming off a recession. You probably don't have a job. A scary thing called AIDS is running around. Desert Storm just fucking happened. We have no idea where we're going as a country. The internet hasn't been quite invented yet. You're kind of lost, right? The 90s hasn't really picked up the jobs market till after 92. So you're just lost. You're post 80s, you're out of coke, you're out of work. So then you start hearing, hey, this guy Marshall Applewhite is kind of doing a new age kind of thing. It's cool, it's got a lot of science into it, and you're just like, well, let's see what he's about. And that's when it starts. And he starts picking the fuck back up.
Yeah, when it picks back up, the cult goes from being this thing with like maybe a few dozen members. The second harvest, they actually get up into the hundreds. Still small by comparison to a lot of other ones we've heard
like
of.
1,000 membership Jim Jones or...
Yeah, but like hundreds of people. And it's not until things start changing more intensely. This happens in a lot of other cults, like one of the biggest ones recently, NXIVM, that happened. Like they start introducing things that not a lot of members will do, except for the most loyal, most invested. So he starts doing things like,
I need you to be part of the religion, and I need you to prove to me that you're in for the long haul.
So doing things like, we're going to get you castrated.
Yes.
They start mandating castrations. Since he is still a closeted homosexual and very obviously ashamed of it, he starts kicking out members that he is attracted to.
He castrates himself. And that's another thing that you don't see a lot of cult members do. The rules for thee, not for me is a big part of the cult aspect. The guy that read the Anthill Kids, he liked to drink and smoke, but they couldn't. Charles Manson would tell everybody to take acid or take mushrooms or whatever, and he'd be sober just watching. And he could fuck any woman in the cult, but they couldn't fuck around. You know what I'm saying? Unless they're fishing and bringing people into the cult. Jim Jones, big part of abstinence, started fucking other people's wives. David Koresh, You no longer have to have sex with your wife. I'll do it for you. You know, that kind of control is kind of what keeps the membership kind of high. Is because, like, this guy can wield that much power in a cult of personality. And you're, like you said, hundreds of people. And if you're seeing that, you're like, well, there's got to be something about this motherfucker. He's got to be right about something. Nobody would just follow an idiot.
Right.
That you would hope.
Boy.
Yeah, oh boy.
Yeah, and so that is that's the second harvest where it really kind of starts picking up back up its steam. The doctrine fundamentally shifts into more of that spiritual journey, that castrations start being mandated, et cetera, et cetera. And then that's when we really bust into the 90s.
Yeah.
All this was between 85 and probably about 1995.
So between the early 90s up until 1995, a lot of the people that are attracted to this cult are in California. They've moved to California, and the number one job in California was the tech industry. So a lot of the people that he gets involved are web developers, people who are doing coding, people who are doing website development. Well,
They were?
Yeah.
I'm looking at their own website. I couldn't tell.
In 1994, 1995, that's top
Yeah,
tier.
that's true. That's true.
Hey,
Definitely very 90s
that's
website.
top tier green text on black.
Bro.
Green text on black, that's prime shit back
Bro,
then.
I remember looking at this website before, but it's like, you know how you can like take in different things at different parts in your life, and like all of a sudden one day you read something that you've read a million times and like it sinks in more than it did before. Dude, I'm having that right now at this website. This website is so fucked. Like, we could have an entire website just on an entire episode on just the articles on this site. It's fucking nuts, dude.
Yeah.
He had these guys make this website.
Sorry, not before you go back into it, my favorite bit. So when you go to the website, of course they're already talking, not to get too far ahead in the discussion, but they're already talking about, Hellbop and shit like that, and the end of, Heaven's Gate, yada, yada, yada. However, you scroll down and, you've still got, specific tabs and things. My favorite tab, actually my second favorite, I want to discuss my favorite in full when we actually get to it. My second favorite tab is one that says how a member of the kingdom of heaven might appear. And I'm like, oh, I'm curious about that. You click it. It's a page with a single JPEG of this bald looking motherfucker. And that's all there is on that
Bill
page.
got a giant head.
It's an alien.
It is. But I just love how
But it's like the stereotype of an alien almost.
The gray.
Like,
The gray.
yeah, the gray man. Like,
But yeah, so but you like click on other things and it's like pages and pages of text, like walls of text, so it's like, as I'm going through all these, I'm like, ooh, all this. Yeah. What's a kingdom of heaven might appear looking like? Oh, a single fucking JPEG on the website. So yeah, go on.
I don't know what a JPEG is. All I know is the kingdom of heaven looks like.
I just want a picture of a goddamn kingdom of heaven.
But those guys, they're making that. And if you think about this for a minute, imagine a world
Can only imagine.
where, let's say Jim Jones didn't kill anybody. Let's say he didn't kill a fucking standing senator. Let's say they made it to the mid-90s. Can you imagine the internet presence of Jim Jones? Can you imagine the internet presence of Ma Anand Sheila? Of Osho? These people, to us, the internet is, the end all be all. If I got a holy roller on here telling me the end of days is this, I got a billion fucking people on the other end being like, this guy is batshit. Okay? But then, back then, it's all forums. How did you find this website? You had to be either told about it or brought there through maybe a pamphlet, maybe a link in a chat forum, or maybe a catalog or some shit. That's all it was. Like the internet song about catalogs and fucking forums.
And think about how personal that made it too. Like maybe it was somebody you already knew going, "Hey, check this shit out." And of course, like in the between the 70s and 90s, there's a lot more, I would say, personal trust between people. So like if your friend sent you a website, you would immediately assume that was some cool shit.
Hey, Tim and Weldon, man, sent me this, man. This is pretty wild. Meanwhile, the other guy, I'm like, Tim and Accountant sent me this. What a fucking idiot. I'm going to kick his ass for wasting my time.
He sends me the Numa Kid one more time, I swear to God.
I swear to Christ. Oh, is it more Star Trek shit, Applewhite? God damn it. But like...
Yes, I saw the new episode.
Yeah, God damn it. Oh, fuck you, dude. I know Riker's the shit.
Yeah, I mean, imagine if he just had the internet. And all homie needed was to find a message board or a group chat with the fucking Star Trek shit in it. He would have been happy. He could have made... man, if he had just found D&D, that's the thing.
Well,
Speaking of D&D.
D&D is a satanic game made by the devil.
Well, he could have made a Christian version.
In fact, the guy that made the second version of D&D was a Methodist who wrote version 2.
I think version 2 was AD&D, which should be version 2. I think was still Gygax.
Yeah, but like there was I forget who it was. It created one of the versions of D&D rules was created by a Methodist, and it was like really complex. And it was just like, there's the meth and Methodist.
It was like I shoot an arrow. All right, well you need to roll for the chance of rain, the wind direction. And
Yeah.
like it's like what?
A lot of statistical math, and it's just like, all these guys take drafting classes. God damn it! Fucking hate these guys. God, they ruined the game. This used to be a game where we could listen to Pink Floyd and Zeppelin in my basement, burn one down, and talk about wizards and shit. But with that website, you're talking about, we joke about it now, but think about what that website would look like compared to early websites that were before our time. I remember
that probably looked at doing things at the same time. It probably looked like it was state of the art.
That looks like fucking Amazon Prime back in 1995. Like I've got to say, it's got recommendations. It's got links to articles.
It's got photos.
It's got photos of galaxies and shit. Look at the backdrop. It's got stars and shit. Green text on black. Man, that's pretty hip.
Classic.
That's hip. That's new. It's exciting. Jerry, check this out. And it's just a new episode of Seinfeld. I got these new Nike Decades, and I love applesauce for some goddamn reason. But with that, he kind of caught himself kind of in a catch-22 when it comes to the tail end. When we get closer to the tail end, it comes into this significant group of people, and on top of the videos he's recording, now we get testimonial videos. Mm-hmm. These are the videos of the people within the cult who are telling what it's like to be in there. And it's not since Jim Jones that we see a lot of these kind of videos. There were people who lived after Jim Jones. There were people who lived after the Rajneeshis who would tell you like what it was like. And they tell it, it's like a paradise almost. Sans the murder. So think about this in the context of the early 90s. This guy, let's say you're a news outlet. You're LA12, doing a story about this wild group of fucks. And you come across a videotape, a viral videotape of, them talking about their thing. Well, that doesn't sound too much different from those new Scientology guys down the road in central LA or Clearwater, Florida. That doesn't sound too much different from that show, The X-Files, that just debuted, Are aliens real? Are we questioning that? That's the new discovery age of the 90s. And so if I'm 30 something years old, 1995, I get sent that link. I'm at work with the internet, and I'm fucking scrolling through on my break. I'm just like, this is some fascinating shit. You know why? Because I'm not flooded with other bullshit. I don't have to get on Facebook. I don't have to be bombarded with Instagram or Snapchat. I'm reading every fucking article about the goddamn stars and shit and how heaven's in the fucking galaxy. And how this new comet that they discovered is coming by, and that might be my last ride to heaven. The Hale-Bopp comet.
Yeah, Hale-Bopp seen in 95, and then they discovered its a companion comet, I think is what it's called, in 96. And they decided that trailing comet was the spaceship that T was on.
Yeah.
Yes.
Bonnie Nettles has already left this mortal coil,
And now
she's up there.
What started that? What caused Do, whatever the fuck his name is, Do, to believe that during Hale-Bopp, if there was going to be a companion, which he believed there was, that was going to be the spaceship? What led him to come to this conclusion?
I believe at this point he is so far backed in a corner that he needs an out.
I kind of agree, kind of disagree. I kind of agree that he was back
Well, what
into
the
a
fuck
corner.
do you know? You're from West Virginia. No, I'm just fucking with you. Go ahead.
Man, if you've been, you'd know.
I saw the Mothman at the Waffle House.
But I mean, I see him all the time, man.
Mothman ate my ass at the Waffle House.
But
No, it was at the Biscuit World.
Tudor's Biscuit World.
Tudor's Biscuit World. Hell yeah.
Tudor's is awesome.
in 95, 96, in that span of years, right? The government's taken out other cults left and right, right? Waco, Ruby Ridge. So I
They
think
quote those a few times on this website as well.
So I think that in his mind, he was probably like, we need to get this done as fast as possible before the government steps in.
So, about that, we had an episode about Waco, the preamble, which is Ruby Ridge. For those who don't know, who have not listened to that episode, please go back and enjoy it. But in the 90s, there is a religious problem with people who were going against the government that were doing some, I'm going to say sketchy shit, not illegal shit, but just sketchy shit. And Ruby Ridge is the opening salvo. And then it goes into Waco, which goes into inevitably Oklahoma City bombing. Homegrown terrorism is the signature of the 90s. And I can understand that. This is why I understand why he's backed in a corner, because I think he saw himself as, oh my God, they're going to make me a homegrown terrorist because they killed that guy in Waco, Texas. But you got to think about the context of the 90s. The people in the news outlets at that time are like, they're listening to the people in Waco, Texas, because the ATF ain't doing fucking press interviews because they need to keep their fucking story straight during the court case. So if I'm hearing people from Waco, Texas, been like, David never did anything wrong. He just ran a church with all them good people. Then people died because the government killed them. If I'm T and hearing that shit, and I've already seen the government kill those people at Ruby Ridge, I kind of don't want to be labeled like David Koresh. So now I'm kind of backed into a corner. And I'd rather go out how I want to go out.
And there's just a quick thing to add, is there's a fellow on YouTube by the name of Miles Power, and he has I think it's like a 2 or 3 part series kind of debunking all of the conspiracies that surround specifically Waco. And kind of like the martyrization of the people involved. And I don't think he necessarily takes side. He doesn't take side and say the government was 100% right. But at the same time, he's like,
Oh, no,
hey,
David
guys.
Koresh is an asshole.
Yeah, he's like, hey, guys, like, they did some wrong shit. Like, just because they fought the FBI and ATF doesn't make them the good guys.
Yeah, but in the context of, I'm putting myself in Applewhite's shoes.
Yeah.
If I'm hearing all these people from Waco and I'm hearing one ATF guy saying David Koresh is a monster, but all these other people who are going to court, going to jail and stuff, and saying, no, we were just trying to have a church out in our hometown, and they attacked us. As a regular person, even as crazy as Applewhite was, I can see him understanding, like, oh my God, the government is killing new religions.
Yeah.
And now I got to worry about me and mine. And I think that's what backs him into a corner.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry to keep cutting you off.
Go ahead.
This just literally pulls us. So this was the segment I really wanted to talk about. Of course, this is a suicide cult. This is what it comes down to. However, they have a segment on their website labeled our position against suicide. And it's like a full 4-paragraph thing. And I've read through this thing so many times, but this is where it actually connects directly in with what you were talking about, Chris. The first paragraph says, we know that it is only while we are in these physical vehicles, bodies, that we could learn the lessons needed to complete our own individual transition, as well as to complete our task of offering the kingdom of heaven to a civilization one last time. We take good care of our vehicles so they can function well for us in this task, and we try to protect them from any harm. Skipping a couple paragraphs, is where it connects in with what Chris is talking about. It could happen before that spacecraft comes. One or more of us could lose our physical vehicles, bodies, due to a, quote, recall, comma, accident, or at the hands of some irate individual. We do not anticipate this, but it is possible. Another possibility is that because of the position we take in our information, we could find so much disfavor with the powers that control this world that there could be attempts to incarcerate us or subject us to some sort of physiological, psychological, or physical torture, such as occurred in both Ruby Ridge and Waco.
That is the mental gymnastics needed to say suicide is okay.
And sorry, to wrap it up, skipping a few more paragraphs, wrapping the page, it says, the true meaning of suicide is to turn against the next level when it is being offered. In these days, we are focused on 2 primary tasks. 1, of making the last attempt of telling the truth about how the next level may be entered, our last effort at offering individuals of the civilization a way to avoid, quote, suicide, and 2, taking advantage of a rare opportunity we have each day to work individually on our personal overcoming and change in preparation for entering the kingdom of heaven. So they literally just see our flesh and bones as like a costume, and that if we were to harm that, that's not proper suicide. That would be us ascending. Suicide is rejecting the offer.
Yeah. Language control and kind of,
yes.
I'm forgetting what the actual word is, but like changing and arguing of definitions of words is textbook cult stuff. And they're no different.
It's also a great tactic of cannibals. A great story about this is the people that were trapped on the Andes Mountains.
Speaking of cannibals, great story.
Great story. They were devout. They were Catholics, and they saw that eating the flesh of their fellow dead members as a necessary thing to do, because if they didn't, they would have died, and that would have been suicide because they didn't try to save themselves. I'm not saying you should kill someone and be a cannibal. They did. They ate dead people, but which is a whole different word, apophagy. But yeah, that's the mental gymnastics you need to justify some bullshit action.
Yeah. So proper suicide is turning against the next level and continuing to live your mortal.
You know what,
life.
Applewhite? Fuck you. Fuck the comment. Fuck the applesauce. I'll take all the barbiturates if I goddamn want to. I'm gonna rub one out, blow my goddamn brains out. Y'all can meet me on the other side. Well, that's suicide.
I do have to say, though, in this whole deep dive, the one thing I'm not really necessarily not grasping, but one aspect that seems to be a bit missing in this, and not missing when we talk about maybe something like a Ruby Ridge, a Waco, Om Sharikyo, other cults, is the main hook. Like, I understand that they think that they are aliens trapped in skin suits and that they're trying to ascend to a higher power and they're trying to pass on the good word. Was that enough? Was that really all it was? Like, it feels like with so many of these others, like there was a bigger grab for these people. This one just feels like such a stretch.
It's
almost.
A stretch because of the way we grew up.
Well, even with that, I mean, I think back at some of the other things. I mean, even take Waco, for example. Live off the land, protect your own. That was like the main things he was really pushing. I understand where a lot of people could be attracted to that and fall into that cult. Are you really telling me it's just a bunch of, late 80s, early 90s computer nerds sitting here going, well, this is cool, I guess I'll follow it?
Well, it's not just that. they have been a part. A lot of these guys were people who have been a part of it since the early 80s and came back during the second harvest when there's hundreds of them. We're talking about a tight 40.
Yeah, but there's new recruitments in there as well.
There's always new recruitments to a cult, and whatever you find in a new group or a new thing, you're gonna find one little thing. It's hard to just say, well, why does Jim Jones sound so good? What about him made him so fucking magnanimous? It's hard to pinpoint it because, yes, in the early days, he was doing civil work. He was doing civil rights acts. He was a socialist. He helped the people. He was the people's temple. That's kind of exciting. But when you're in, well, why did they stay? He's throwing the Bible down on the ground, stomping on it, saying, God, kill me now. Guess what? He's not fucking real. I'm real. I would have left. Everyone else stayed. So trying to find justification, I don't understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
What's the hook?
Yeah. Because it's like, I hate sounding like that, but it's like, I get the other cults. I get the hook. I'm not.
But the hook.
This feels very surface level. Like I was waiting for that final scoop in that was going to be like, oh, that's why people are really believing this.
I think that's why it's so small, is because the hook only got a handful of people. Jim Jones had 1,000 people in Guyana. 900 of them, deader than hell.
Dead or nil.
Shinrikyo, he got them so ramped the fuck up, they created a terrorist attack. David Koresh was generational people who had been in the church, their grandparents were a part of, their great-grandparents were a part of, people who moved to Texas with the church. That's what they were. So it wasn't a lot of new recruits at Waco. It was just like people who were just generationally trapped. The hook of a cult isn't about the religious part. It's not always the answer to a question. It's, I want to belong, and this demographic of people feel just right.
I guess they feel just right enough to believe that they're going to recycle and exit off of this world and get on a spaceship. Like that's the part that, I mean, because I've seen the videos, I've seen the dude, he's got some crazy eyes. He can suck you in, but like, more in a creepy way, not like in a, oh wow, this is a messiah type way.
Well, I think that's why it's just not a lot.
Yeah. No, I agree. I get what you're saying.
And I'm going to use, I already mentioned them earlier, but I'm going to use NXIVM again as an example, right? Like, you do these things in the doctrine, like the castrations, the androgyny, repression, etc., to weed out the people that are not going to follow through. That's why I prefaced everything with, not everybody can fall for a cult. It's only the people that, like, from the get-go, they're searching for a certain type of person, and it's a person that's going to be willing to go through with castrating themselves and going all the way.
There are phases that you'll see in cults. The first phase is the thesis statement phase, where I am A, we believe in B, are you with me?
If not, you are C.
Then phase two. To test the faith of the congregation, Jim Jones told everyone to take a sip of a drink, and he watched. He's higher than fuck, but he's watching, and he's watching people who don't take the drink, and then he boxes those motherfuckers out. Shinrikyo tortured people to death who were not down with the cause. The Anthill kids took a girl's fucking leg off because he could, because she had a question, and everyone else was like, I think I'll just shut the fuck up now and follow and make jam. I think that will be my jam.
Jellies and jams.
Jellies and jams. But like, these are the phases of a cult. NXIVM was moderate torture, if I remember correctly.
Yeah,
the branding was first.
Branding, torture,
and then whoever wanted to get the fuck out got the fuck out. But the ones who stayed
were the ones that bought into, like, we're gonna wear those ridiculous sashes.
Yes.
And we're gonna go along with whatever humiliations, turning over the secrets of my life, etc. That one was more blackmail, but the methods of control are all the same.
Yeah, so the only one that's the outlier of this is Scientology. Scientology is a generational phase out. I need you to be cool about everything, and I need your kids to be cool about it.
And I need a lot of money.
Money is the backbone. But
Sunk cost definitely gets a lot of people too, probably.
yeah. But also, that was a ever-growing religion. After the main guy dies, the new guy comes in and says, hey, he said there were 8 phases. We realize that there's 9. So now you got to start back from the beginning and work your way back. And once you get to 9, I can explain everything. And by the time you get to 9, there's a fucking phase 10, and then a phase 11, and phase, this, and this.
Secret 13.
Yeah. So it's like rungs on a ladder. So he didn't have that. He didn't need that, because now, with the threat of the government, he has a low congregation of devout followers. He's golden. He's golden for that final phase. You're either with me or you're against me. And you get to the Jim Jones phase. The end all be all. I hope this doesn't happen in our lifetime with Scientology. That would be horrific. David Miscavige comes out on stage and tells everybody to kill each other.
I mean, we need a few more movies from Tom Cruise first.
Yeah. I would argue, as a Chris Morrison prediction, that if David Miscavige dies of a horrific hot air balloon accident, or
Here you go with your hot air balloons again.
if you keep talking about the government, that'll happen to you. Oh my God. We are gathered here today at the funeral of Alex Stiff. We could not find his remains, but goddamn, he loved hot air balloons. Everyone knew the long history, and here we just shows Photoshopped pictures of you in a fucking on a hot air balloon, just like, yeah, bro, and you just horrifically fallen.
Yeah.
It happens to the best of us. I want to go out saying, I guess that was a shark. See, something fun. But I digress. But I predict Tom Cruise would be the next leader of Scientology. And bring it out of the fucking dark ages of, missing wives and Clearwater, Florida. But now he's boxed in.
Yeah, so we get to the meat of it.
Yeah, and now we have the Hale-Bopp Comet, the ship that's following it. And now he tells them the final stage. And this is where that gymnastics comes in, because there's a couple guys on that website that are clicky clacking and been like, well, it says here that suicide's wrong. Well, did you read the last paragraph Tim added?
Go read.
I don't think you did. And you got fucking Applewhite's tiny ass looking at you, not blinking. And you're like, well, I guess let me check the computer real quick. Check the website.
10 minutes later, oh, shit.
Oh, shit. I do love their last meal. So they go to a diner right before they all decide to leave this mortal coil and eat nothing but chicken pot pie and chocolate cake. Sing songs in a diner, just hang out. And they're listening. And the way they describe what they look like when they're in the diner are in fucking black sweatpants and black t-shirts. They probably look like a group of martial artists who just got out of fucking training and just had a great time and just wanted to finish the night out at a Denny's.
I do also love this little random tidbit. So in October 96, the group rented a large house they called the Monastery, a 9,200 square foot mansion located right outside of Santa Fe, California. Paid $7,000 a month in cash. Mm-hmm. The same month, the group purchased alien abduction insurance.
Yes.
That would cover up to 50 members and would pay out $1 million per person. The policy covered abduction, impregnation, or death by aliens.
Yes. They paid $10,000 cash. And you got to think about this. All these guys are working as web developers. And so that's where the money's coming from.
I need to work for a fucking insurance company, man.
That guy-
These guys are making money hand over fist for fucking nothing, bro. Alien insurance? Bro, I'm offering fucking alien insurance fucking right now. Hit me up at the Something Good Network Instagram. Shit.
Hot air balloon insurance.
I do not cover that. I'm sorry.
You need that. But yeah, so they go in to prepare themselves to ascend. They don robes. They wear a crisp, each one, a crisp pair of Nike Decades. And I can only imagine after they are discovered, the guy at Nike being like, God fucking
Shit.
damn it, we have to make a new shoe? We can't have Colt shoes out here. God damn it.
Yeah, it was phenobarbital, you with pudding or applesauce,
And vodka.
and vodka, and then they just put a plastic bag over their head
And fell asleep.
and fell asleep. And with, I think it was done in like 3 groups.
So you had group 1.
Group 1 go, the next group would cover the bodies, dress them up, whatever, move them. Then they'd do the same thing. And then the next group, except for, of course, the last ones to do it because there was nobody left.
There was one guy. One guy lasted. One guy, his job, and now think about this. He sacrificed himself to stay on Earth to be the last caretaker and to give a statement to the world. Dominique Prado, I think his name was. Fascinating guy. You have got to be the smoothest motherfucker to tell Marshall Applewhite. Marshall, my man. I think we need someone to stay behind to tell the story. Well, Mr. Prado, I don't understand. Or
I
whatever.
mean, we do have all this video, the archive on the website.
No, I understand that. We have that. But the last phase, who is going to take care of them?
Well, I mean, we do have, certain safeguards.
Marshall,
in place.
my man. And it's just that conversation.
Yeah.
And it's just like that guy who probably talked to Jim Jones is like, while you guys are doing this, I'm going to take my AK out. I'm going to go into the woods, make sure there's no survivors. You do that. You do that. And he's just like, what a fucking skate I got off on this. God just moonwalked out of that motherfucker.
Wait, going back real quick to the Nikes, it was an in joke that they wore Nikes. That instead of, how Nike is just do it.
Yeah.
Just do it.
Just do it.
Just do it.
I also love, they also all had armband patches reading Heaven's Gate Away Team.
Yeah, so when they went into the diner, that was the patches that the waitresses saw, and they was just like, fucking losers. Like,
Is there a Trekkie convention in town? Bunch of nerds.
And you know what fucking sucks? What I think is, like, for these Star Trek fans, right when they died, if they had waited, Deep Space Nine fucking finale was going to be, like, right up there. And they could have just stayed, they could have lasted, like, 6 more months. They could have saw the finale and write a whole new chapter to their weird little religion.
I also find it interesting they left a $5 bill.
And 75 cents in
Yes.
each pocket.
Cover the cost of vagrancy.
Yep. That is just wild. But that could also be some shit that Applewhite said. I'm like, hey man, you got to pay the toll. Like,
Got to pay the troll toll.
yeah,
And to me, this just adds a layer of creepiness.
of course.
Okay. I don't even know what I'm going to say. But, so...
ascend in hot air balloons.
Everyone has ascended at this point.
Yep.
And as you were saying, someone needs to stay behind to tell the story. However, their website was set up to be ready for that by now. The opening paragraph to the away team's message, because they anticipated the news was going to pick it up. The opening paragraph, it says, to be issued to news media. By the time you read this, we suspect that the human bodies we were wearing have been found, and that a flurry of fragmented reports have begun to hit the wire services. For those who want to know the facts, the following statement has been issued. And then it goes on and reads. That adds an extra layer of creepiness.
So when you deal with...
Like, that just makes you feel, like, icky hearing that.
So when you find that a lot in suicide cults. The worst one is the last audio recording of Jim Jones.
Yes, that is terrifying.
You hear
sound.
people screaming, babies crying, and you
Then
hear
nothing.
him, and you hear him the whole time preaching, mother, 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 and he's talking to his fucking wife, and she's begging for this to fucking stop. Meanwhile, his two closest people are still stirring the fucking Kool-Aid and passing it the fuck out. It is some of the most horrific shit. There was actually, in Shinrikyo, there was a plan before they got caught for them all to die before he pulled a Saddam Hussein and fucking dug himself into a hole with a shit ton of cash and drugs. They were all going to kill themselves too. They had a statement prepared because they assumed the ricin poison they had created would have killed them on the train. So that was another like creepy aspect to it. Like when you're dealing with suicide cults, you're going to get those statements. Hey, this is what we're about, blah, blah, blah. Recently, there have been two new cults that have kind of popped up on my radar. The Twin Flames and
I've heard of Twin Flames.
Twin Flames is a relationship cult. But the other one, which I would love to cover a deep dive on probably later in 2024, was the Mother God cult, where the cult leader was killed by her own cult because of lack of understanding of medical science. She turned purple and died. She turned into Grimace.
She had the grimace shake.
One too many shakes.
Hey. But yeah, that's the story of Heaven's Gate. There's so much more out there research-wise. Check out the website. It's fun.
It's fucking fascinating. That's all I've done this entire episode.
Yeah.
Which I will say is a funny PS on the Wikipedia page. At the very bottom, the very last thing, right before the See Also section, it says, the infamy caused by the mass suicides, limited availability, and their sudden, unceremonious discontinuation has cited as reasons for the high resale value of Nike Decades.
So you can go online. And there's always a new pair that pops up, and it's always, this is one of the pair, and it's like, it's not that all that shit got cremated, like, but it's like,
I'm assuming it did,
yeah, but it's like, this is one of the pair of Nike Decades they wore, and it's just like, you piece of shit. Fuck, I want a pair now. But I don't think they had odd sizes.
Got 10.5 wide.
I wear 13 long, man. But Robert, thanks for joining us. Hope to have you back soon. I'll be up in West Virginia in no time soon. We can talk about the Mothman again. Talk about the Flatwoods Monster, because we never did a big deep dive into that one. Or the Men in Black.
No,
the Men in Black coming from West Virginia. That's what that's from. Alex, always thanks for being our Jamie on this one.
of course.
Everybody, please check out all the other shows on the Something Good Network. Alex has got his little thing. I got my little thing. Mikey's got his little thing. We
all have little things. We're not
I'm
self-conscious about it at all.
I'm on 3 goddamn shows. I'm tired. Okay. Check out all 3 of my little things. Thanks, guys. Thanks for joining us, and check us out on the Discord. We take recommendations now, or at least the people who read the Discord.
I love how you're like, now, as if we haven't in the past.
I have not. Christy has forced me to do that.
You've been listening to the Something Good Network. If you liked what you heard, you can follow us on Instagram, and check out the other great shows on the network. Link is in the episode description.